The Voice Before the Void.net. The Gods of Pegana by Lord Dunsany. Part 2. Read by The Voice Before the Void. The Deeds of Mung, Lord of all deaths between Pegana and the Rim. Once, as Mung went his way athwart the earth and up and down its cities and across its plains, Mung came upon a man who was afraid when Mung said, "I am Mung." And Mung said, "Were the 40 million years before thy coming intolerable to thee?" And Mung said, "Not less tolerable to thee shall be the 40 million years to come." Then Mung made against him the sign of Mung, and the life of the man was fettered no longer with hands and feet. At the end of the flight of the arrow there is Mung, and in the houses and the cities of men. Mung walketh in all places at all times. But mostly he loves to walk in the dark, and still along the river mists when the wind hath sank, a little before night meeteth with the morning upon the highway between Pegana and the worlds. Sometimes Mung entereth the poor man's cottage. Mung also boweth very low before the king. Then do the lives of the poor man and of the king go forth among the worlds. And Mung said, "Many turnings hath the road that Kib hath given every man to tread upon the earth. Behind one of these turnings sitteth Mung." One day, as a man trod upon the road that Kib had given him to tread, he came suddenly upon Mung. And when Mung said, "I am Mung," the man cried out, "Alas, that I took this road! For had I gone by any other way, then had I not met with Mung." And Mung said, "Had it been possible for thee to go by any other way, then had the scheme of things been otherwise, and the gods had been other gods. When Mana Yud Sushai forgets to rest and makes again new gods, it may be that they will send thee again into the worlds, and then thou mayest choose some other way, and not meet with Mung." Then Mung made the sign of Mung, and the life of that man went forth with yesterday's regrets, and all old sorrows and forgotten things, whither Mung knoweth. And Mung went onward with his work to sunder life from flesh. And Mung came upon a man who became stricken with sorrow when he saw the shadow of Mung. But Mung said, "When at the sign of Mung thy life shall float away, there will also disappear thy sorrow at forsaking it." But the man cried out, "O Mung, tarry for a little, and make not the sign of Mung against me now, for I have a family upon the earth with whom sorrow will remain, though mine should disappear because of the sign of Mung." And Mung said, "With the gods it is always now. And before Sish hath banished many of the years, the sorrows of thy family for thee shall go the way of thine." And the man beheld Mung making the sign of Mung before his eyes, which beheld things no more. The Chaunt of the Priests. This is the chaunt of the priests, the chaunt of the priests of Mung. This is the chaunt of the priests. All day long to Mung cry out the priests of Mung, and yet Mung hearkeneth not. What then shall avail the prayers of all the people? Rather bring gifts to the priests of Mung. So shall they cry louder unto Mung than ever was their wont. And it may be that Mung shall hear. Not any longer then shall fall the shadow of Mung athwart the hopes of the people. Not any longer then shall the tread of Mung darken the dreams of the people. Not any longer shall the lives of the people be loosened because of Mung. Bring ye gifts to the priests of Mung. This is the chaunt of the priests, the chaunt of the priests of Mung. This is the chaunt of the priests. the sayings of Limpong Tung, the god of mirth and of melodious minstrels. And Limpong Tung said, The ways of the gods are strange. The flower groweth up, and the flower fadeth away. This may be very clever of the gods. Man groweth from his infancy, and in a while he dieth. This may be very clever too. But the gods play with a strange scheme. I will send jests into the world and a little mirth. And while death seems to thee as far away as the purple rim of hills, or sorrow as far off as rain in the blue days of summer, then pray to Limpong Tung. But when thou growest old, or ere thou diest, pray not of Limpong Tung, for thou becomest part of a scheme that he doth not understand. Go out into the starry night, and Limpong Tung will dance with thee who danced since the gods were young, the god of mirth and of melodious minstrels. Or offer up a jest to Limpong Tung. Only pray not in thy sorrow to Limpong Tung, for he saith of sorrow, It may be very clever of the gods, but he doth not understand. And Limpong Tung said, I am lesser than the gods. Pray, therefore, to the small gods, and not to Limpong Tung. Natheless, between Pegana and the earth flutter 10,000 prayers that beat their wings against the face of death, and never for one of them hath the hand of the striker been stayed, nor yet have tarried the feet of the relentless one. Utter thy prayer. It may accomplish where failed 10,000. Limpong Tung is lesser than the gods, and doth not understand. And Limpong Tung said, Lest men grow weary down on the great worlds, through gazing always at a changeless sky, I will paint my pictures in the sky, and I will paint them twice in every day for so long as days shall be. Once as the day ariseth out of the homes of dawn will I paint the blue, that men may see and rejoice. And ere day falleth under into the night will I paint upon the blue again, lest men be sad. It is a little, said Limpong Tung. It is a little even for a god to give some pleasure to men upon the worlds. And Limpong Tung hath sworn that the pictures he paints shall never be the same for so long as the days shall be. And this he hath sworn by the oath of the gods of Pegana, that the gods may never break, laying his hand upon the shoulder of each of the gods, and swearing by the light behind their eyes. Limpong Tung hath lured a melody out of the stream, and stolen its anthem from the forest. For him the wind hath cried in lonely places, and the ocean sung its dirges. There is music for Limpong Tung in the sounds of the moving of grass, and in the voices of the people that lament, or in the cry of them that rejoice. In an inner mountain land where none hath come, he hath carved his organ pipes out of the mountains, and there when the winds, his servants, come in from all the world, he maketh the melody of Limpong Tung. But the song, arising at night, goeth forth like a river, winding through all the world, and here and there amid the peoples of earth one heareth, and straightway all that hath voice to sing crieth aloud in music to his soul. Or sometimes walking through the dusk with steps unheard by men, in a form unseen by the people, Limpong Tung goeth abroad, and standing behind the minstrels in cities of song, waveth his hands above them to and fro, and the minstrels bend to their work, and the voice of the music ariseth, and mirth and melody abound in that city of song, and no one seeth Limpong Tung as he standeth behind the minstrels. But through the mists towards morning, in the dark when the minstrels sleep and mirth and melody have sunk to rest, Limpong Tung goeth back again to his mountain land. Of Yoharneth Lahai, the god of little dreams and fancies. Yoharneth Lahai is the god of little dreams and fancies. All night he sendeth little dreams out of Pegana to please the people of earth. He sendeth little dreams to the poor man, and to the king. He is so busy to send his dreams to all before the night be ended, that oft he forgetteth which be the poor man, and which be the king. To whom Yoharneth Lahai cometh not with little dreams, and sleep he must endure all night the laughter of the gods, with highest mockery, in Pegana. All night long Yoharneth Lahai giveth peace to cities until the dawn hour, and the departing of Yoharneth Lahai, when it is time for the gods to play with men again. Whether the dreams and the fancies of Yoharneth Lahai be false, and the things that are done in the day be real, or the things that are done in the day be false, and the dreams and the fancies of Yoharneth Lahai be true, none knoweth, saving only Mana Yud Sushai, who hath not spoken. Of Rune, the god of going, and the 1,000 home gods. Rune said, There be gods of moving, and gods of standing still, but I am the god of going. It is because of Rune that the worlds are never still, for the moons and the worlds and the comet are stirred by the spirit of Rune, which saith, Go, go, go. Rune met the worlds all in the morning of things, before there was light upon Pegana, and Rune danced before them in the void, since when they are never still. Rune sendeth all streams to the sea, and all the rivers to the soul of Slid. Rune maketh the sign of Rune before the waters, and lo, they have left the hills. And Rune hath spoken in the ear of the north wind, that he may be still no more. The footfall of Rune hath been heard at evening outside the houses of men, and thenceforth comfort and abiding know them no more. Before them stretcheth travel over all the lands, long miles, and never resting between their homes and their graves, and all at the bidding of Rune. The mountains have set no limit against Rune, nor all the seas a boundary. Whither Rune hath desired, there must Rune's people go, and the worlds and their streams and the winds. I heard the whisper of Rune at evening, saying, There are islands of spices to the south, and the voice of Rune saying, Go. And Rune said, There are 1,000 home gods, the little gods that sit before the hearth and mind the fire. There is one Rune. Rune saith in a whisper when none heareth, when the sun is low. What doeth Mana Yud Sushai? Rune is no god that thou mayest worship by thy hearth, nor will he be benignant to thy home. Offer to Rune thy toiling and thy speed, whose incense is the smoke of the campfire to the south, whose song is the sound of going, whose temples stand beyond the farthest hills in the lands behind the east. Yaranareth, 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 which signifieth beyond. These words be carved in letters of gold upon the arch of the great portal of the temple of Rune that men have builded looking towards the east upon the sea, where Rune is carved as a giant trumpeter, with his trumpet pointing towards the east beyond the seas. Whoso heareth his voice, the voice of Rune at evening, he at once forsaketh the home gods that sit beside the hearth. These be the gods of the hearth, Pitsu, who stroketh the cat, Habith, who calms the dog, and Habaniah, the lord of glowing embers, and little Zumbibu, the lord of dust, and old Gribon, who sits at the heart of the fire to turn the wood to ash. All these be home gods, and live not in Pegana, and be lesser than Rune. There is also Kalulagung, the lord of arising smoke, who taketh the smoke from the hearth and sendeth it to the sky, who is pleased if it reacheth Pegana, so that the gods of Pegana, speaking to the gods, say, There is Kalulagung, doing the work on earth of Kalulagung. All these are gods so small that they be lesser than men, but pleasant gods to have beside the hearth, and often men have prayed to Kululugung, saying, Thou whose smoke ascendeth to Pegana, send up with it our prayers, that the gods may hear. And Kululugung, who is pleased that men should pray, stretches himself up all grey and lean, with his arms above his head, and sendeth his servant the smoke to seek Pegana, that the gods of Pegana may know that the people pray. And Jabim is the Lord of broken things, who sitteth behind the house to lament the things that are cast away. And there he sitteth lamenting the broken things, until the worlds be ended, or until someone cometh to mend the broken things. Or sometimes he sitteth by the river's edge, to lament the forgotten things that drift upon it. A kindly God is Jabim, whose heart is sore if anything be lost. There is also Tribugi, the Lord of Dusk, whose children are the shadows, who sitteth in a corner far off from Habaniah, and speaketh to none. But after Habaniah hath gone to sleep, and old Gribbon hath blinked 100 times, until he forgetteth which be wood or ash, then doth Tribugi send his children to run about the room, and dance upon the walls, but never disturb the silence. But when there is light again upon the worlds, and dawn comes dancing down the highway from Pegana, then does Tribugi retire into his corner, with his children all around him, as though they had never danced about the room. And the slaves of Habaniah and old Gribbon come and awake them from their sleep upon the hearth, and Pitsu strokes the cat, and Hubbeth calms the dog, and Kululugung stretches aloft his arms towards Pegana, and Tribugi is very still, and his children sleep. And when it is dark, all in the hour of Tribugi, Hish creepeth from the forest, the Lord of Silence, whose children are the bats, that have broken the command of their father, but in a voice that is ever so low. Hish husheth the mouse, and all the whispers in the night. He maketh all noises still. Only the cricket rebelleth. But Hish hath set against him such a spell, that after he hath cried 1,000 times, his voice may be heard no more, but becometh part of the silence. And when he hath slain all sounds, Hish boweth low to the ground. Then cometh into the house, with never a sound of feet, the god Yoharneth Lahai. But away in the forest whence Hish hath come, Wahun, the Lord of Noises in the night, awaketh in his lair, and creepeth round the forest to see whether it be true that Hish hath gone. Then in some glade Wahun lifts up his voice and cries aloud, that all the night may hear that it is he, Wahun, who is abroad in all the forest. And the wolf and the fox and the owl, and the great beasts and the small, lift up their voices to acclaim Wahun. And there arise the sounds of voices and the stirring of leaves. Continued in Part 3.